DreamHeat.com. Podcast number 2. I'm sitting here with Keizo, GreenHeat, and Nuaris all joining me on the panel tonight. Now, I told you before the break that we're giving away a Battle.net Authenticator, and very soon we're going to tell you how to win that. But I want to give a big shout out. GreenHeat, do you want to give this big shout out? Because I know you're excited to give this shout out.
Oh, I think you're referring to Dubcath on the forums. Is that it?
That's it. Go for it, man.
All right, this guy Dubcath somehow, telekinetically, he picked up on what we're going to talk about tonight. He knew that the podcast was going to be on the Demon Hunter. So what did he do? He went and brought up a really good point in the forums, talking about will Demon Hunters be able to kite. So I'd just like to give a big shout out to you, Dubcath, for picking up on it.
Bro,
hello?
We fucking are choosing the Demon Hunter because Dubcath asked the question, not the other way around.
Oh, is that really? I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Oh my god. We're gonna have to
I thought you just
go back to the point where I say, hey, GreenHeat, shout this guy out.
That was such a good lull. I thought that was part of it.
And since our friend Dubcath over at d3combat.proboards.com asked such a great question about the Demon Hunter, let me read it to you. He posted, how mobile will the Demon Hunter be in PvP? And he was wondering if they could backstrafe and shoot at the same time, or if they needed to stop and shoot. So he basically wanted to know if you could kite without letting the opponent gain ground. And he really wanted to know what the deal was with that. So in honor of Dubcath, we're going to talk a lot about the Demon Hunter, various spells, a lot of the passive spells, and potential viability of those spells in PvP. So GreenHeat, can you just elaborate a little bit on either the forum posts or just another idea you might have had about Demon Hunters, quickly?
Well, I think what Dubcath was referring to in his post was, what instance pops to my mind, he referred to WoW. I think when you're being kited by a Warlock in WoW, and he's tossing like Curse of Agony on you, when he jumps, turns around and does an instant cast, and then turns back around and keeps running without ever losing momentum. I think that's what he's referring to.
No,
and,
not
you
Curse of Agony. Curse of Exhaustion. Had to correct that.
Well, it used to be Curse of Agony. My bad, bro. I played a warrior. Anyway, if you go to that post, you'll see my I posted a link to a video, and that shows that I don't think that'll be possible, because every single skill in Diablo 3 seems to have some sort of small cast animation. It may not be an elaborate cast time, but there'll be at least like a half a second cast time. So you have to stop to do it. And if you think about Diablo 2, it was that same way. Every single thing you could not cast while moving. You had to stop.
Keizo?
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. I would relate the kiting ability of the Demon Hunter more to a hunter from WoW, more than a warlock, just because they have
That's true. Yeah.
What is it? Dazing shot or
Entangling shot.
Okay, entangling shot. There's something else that dazes you though, that they do.
Concussive shot.
Oh, concussive shot. There you go. And they
well,
can
the
have...
hunters in WoW is concussive shot.
Right, and then they can use. Yeah.
Okay, let me just read for people who might not be aware. Entangling shot. This is a debuff skill that deals solid damage as well as slowing the target. Nearby enemies may be chained as well, potentially slowing several monsters and blocking the movement of all that are stuck behind them. Now, this is how it's described. Releases a sticky adhesive that deals a percentage of weapon damage and entangles up to a certain number of enemies, slowing their movement speed by a certain percentage for a certain amount of time.
You're a sticky adhesive.
No, you're a sticky adhesive. So I feel like that's going to have some pretty nice value if you can use it properly in PvP. You might even be able to catch, say for example in a 2v2 match, you might even be able to catch both of your opponents with one entangling shot. It'll give you a lot of mobility to either kite them, get away, get into a better spot on the map, allow your teammate to escape an attack. So it seems like it's going to have a lot of offensive and defensive potential as a spell for the Demon Hunter.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. Go ahead, Bob.
Thanks. However, I'd like to point out in that skill description, it uses the term monsters. Now, I don't know if they're going to pull some stuff like they did in WoW, where abilities in PvE have different effects than they do in PvP.
Oh, they will. Yes, they are. Certain spells will be rebalanced for PvP. Mostly
Okay.
CC and stun duration type effects.
Because if I feel like if say you're doing a 3v3 team deathmatch, for example, if they're all grouped up at any one point, you can slow down all three of them for an extended period of time using that skill. So
Well, I don't
I don't
think
know if that'll be overpowered or just
I don't think
what do you
that I don't think that that skill is going to be as effective as you might be thinking. I don't think the slow effect will last very long, and I just think I really just don't like think that kiting in that way is going to be how it's done in arena. Like, I don't think you can just spam entangling shot and keep your opponent out of range like that long. You know what I mean? Because Diablo combat's a lot more fast paced than WoW. Plus, plus the Demon Hunter's other skill, Vault, which allows you to skip across the map it's almost like a blink. If you can combine that with like an overpowered version of entangling shot, then there's really no way to ever catch a Demon Hunter.
Are you referring to that cartwheel skill?
Yes.
Now, the basically shadow juking cartwheel spell that is in the video that GreenHeat linked on the forums basically is like a maneuverability / escapability spell for the Demon Hunter. Now, Vault, this is how it's described on the wiki page. Vault is a fast movement skill. This allows the Demon Hunter to move a considerable distance at high speed, passing through monsters and other players, though not through solid objects or open space. So I think that's a big clause right there. You can pass through monsters and other players, but you can't pass through open space. So basically, when you're cutting with it, you can't just be cutting away. You're gonna have to be able near someone before you can even use it to
You have to
kite.
go through them.
Right.
So
So it's gonna be interesting to see how you can use your traps in conjunction with your vaults. You know?
I think we're gonna see a lot, especially for Demon Hunter. It's gonna be basically kiting, but I don't think you can kite a player indefinitely. I guess we'll see depending on the cooldowns, but I think it's going to be more or less you're kiting your opponent into one of your traps, or basically learning to kite into your traps.
So Nuaris, I know a lot of the Demon Hunter spells are basically traps. Like Spike Trap, for example, it's a trap placed and triggers when enemies move into range. So a big question that I know you brought up to me earlier today was, are opposing players in a PvP setting going to be able to see the Demon Hunter's traps?
Yeah, I think a big part of the Demon Hunter is if you're going to be kiting your enemy, you're going to have to kite him around to hit your sentries or your traps. And I know there will be certain different types of traps that have different effects, but if an opponent can see your trap, it's very unlikely that they're going to walk directly into it. So I think certain traps like the one that they have called Spike Trap, which is basically it plants a ball on the ground, and when you run over it, it explodes, and there's like a little bit of area effect damage. But if something like that is visible, I don't think an enemy will ever step into it in the arena. I think it's more likely that something like that won't be seen by the enemy, and it's up to the Demon Hunter to kite efficiently into their unseen and seen traps.
I also think with mixing the traps with the entangling shot for the arenas, because the certain power-ups will spawn, you're going to want to use that stuff to stop people from getting the power-ups. However, you're not going to be able to stop classes that have teleport, which wizard, or wizard, or other demon hunters.
I believe wizard with the teleport and barbarian with leap are the only other movement effects similar. Now,
Right.
An interesting thing was going to be using the demon hunter, kind of like baiting the opposing player to get to the power up, and then just vaulting through him and picking up the power ups first. That could be pretty interesting.
Exactly. That leads into my idea of how the vault is actually going to be used. As I would put it, would be counter juking. Either some guy tries to gain ground between you, and say it's a barbarian, and he'll try and use his leap skill to get behind you or past you to stop you. In which case, you just vault him as he does it into the other direction. Or in the case of the power ups, you bait them away, yes, and then as soon as the power up spawns, you vault through them directly to it. So I think it'll be used more in the aspect of what I call counter juking rather than kiting.
Well, it's also going to help you get out of line of sight.
Definitely.
Maybe not as efficient, because I was thinking about how it might differ from the Wizard Blink. For wizards, they can go right through solid objects, whereas Vault, you cannot do that. You're pretty much forced to vault around like a pillar if you want to get out of sight, whereas a wizard might be able to go right through it. But I think it's just going to be a little bit more difficult to kite as a demon hunter than maybe a wizard.
That's why Wizard will be OP.
There it is already. I think, honestly, Demon Hunter is probably going to be the most skill-intensive class right now because of the resource pool that they're going to have. They won't be using mana. They're going to be using Hatred and Discipline. Now, it's not quite clear how either of these things are going to work or play off each other, but basically certain abilities generate hatred, and other certain abilities require you to have a certain amount of discipline. But if you build up too much hatred, your discipline will fall too far to use those discipline abilities, so you're going to need some sort of hatred dump. That kind of makes me think of like a rage dump in WoW for a warrior, but it's different because every warrior spell requires rage. There's no penalty for having a lot of rage built up. In the Demon Hunter, if you have too much hatred built up, you actually are locking yourself out of certain spells. So it's going to be a lot of managing cooldowns as well as resources like hatred and discipline. How do you guys think the hatred and discipline are going to work? Do you think do you actually believe it's going to be the most micromanaging and skill-intensive class because of the resource system?
It'll probably be more difficult than using just say mana. I don't know. I mean, they'll probably have clear ways to dump your skills, in which case people like you don't have to be excellent at doing it in order to do well. So say you just look down and you go, oh, I have way too much hatred right now. I'll just use this skill to dump it all. I think there'll be ways like that, but the people who are going to be best at Demon Hunter will be absolutely pro at managing that.
Well,
Also, as a side note, that just reminds me of the shaman from Warhammer Online. Just a side note.
How difficult do you think it'll be to juggle hatred and discipline when you need to consider that you're only going to have 6 skills? So I'm sure that it'll be easy to determine which skills do what and how you're going to be managing them when there's only six of them to choose from. You can probably set it up perfectly where you take the 6 skills that would probably balance out hatred and discipline the most.
I think one of the general ideas about hatred is that hatred is kind of meant to be traps, arrow and crossbow, bow shots. Basically, the burst and high damage spells are going to be hatred, and a lot of the movement and defensive type abilities are going to be require discipline. So you're going to make sure that I think it's kind of like, yeah, you can go for a huge burst, and then you'll build up all your hatred rather. But if you go for that burst, you don't kill someone, you might not be able to get away because you're going to be hatred capped, and you're not going to be able to use any of your discipline spells. So you got to be careful.